It's a beautiful Friday morning here in Abuja and the first day of the month of September. I've taken that from Maya. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Neota Igbe.
Yes, indeed. Thank God it's Friday. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Koka.
Well, since you already gave the time check, or rather the date check, what else is there to do? Good morning and welcome to the last month in the third quarter of the year 2023. I'm Ayo Makinde. I'm talking about time checks. Well, something else to check, which has, of course, been of interest to many, is security or a lack of it. And, you know, oftentimes when we talk about security, we're primarily talking about the police. And I would say in the rarest of occasions, we hear the Inspector General of Police, you know, saying that insufficient manpower in the Nigerian police force is hampering the effective deployment of police to critical areas. He also said that at the moment, the Nigerian police needs at least 190,000 personnel to be at parity with the United Nations recommendations. Now, that definitely is cheering, wouldn't you say? According to him, this has led to inability of the force to deploy its men to industrial layouts and communities and all of those things. Well, of course, he was speaking at the at NIPS on industrialization, energy security, and climate change mitigation and adoration. You know, the first thing that comes to me about this is naturally one of the first few things we hear a number of people say. Once an IGP comes in, the first thing you hear is to withdraw policemen from those VIPs. And it is interesting when we hear, you know, that policemen have been withdrawn from VIPs, so that the announcement is made that policemen are withdrawn from VIPs. I think it was in the build-up to the elections. I think that to one of the elections, former police PRO was letting us know that when we talk about policemen that are deployed, we're actually talking about fewer than we know. According to the police PRO at the time, he was speaking about the fact that policemen, there are accountants among them, there are drivers among them, there are other services other than the primary function of police. There are mechanics among them, there are, you know, other people who do administrative stuff to support the activities of the police, and that is cheering. However, what's the number of the people who many people believe is the number of people that are actually doing the job of policing? A good number of people put the number at something in the region of 350,000 or thereabouts. So how many of them are actually doing the job of the police? We have them spread all over the nation. We have policemen you know, doing several other work, accountancy, administrative functions, finance, engineering, you name it, in the police force. So what's the number of those ones doing those support services? And what's the function of those people who do the actual police work? If, for instance, speculatively, we have something in the region of 100,000 doing those other stuff, and then we have another number of people assigned to VIPs. Just how many do we have doing the actual police work all over the nation? Well, when the police IGP says they need a minimum of 190,000 policemen all over the nation, naturally, a good number of people will ask, Bukola, will that be enough?
Well, at least it's a place to start, a very good place to start, Ayo. And thank you for reminding us, you know, about, you know, the first takeoff point for each IG of police, you know, that they would withdraw security detail from VIPs. But beyond that, that was a core policy initiative announced by this administration before it came on board, as contained in its manifesto, that it was part of the restructuring that it would embark upon. So I recall that the IGP, in fact, started off with that, but has it been done? Besides that, now that the litigation issues between the Police Service Commission and the Office of the IGP has been settled, we hope that the recruitment of new police officers would begin in earnest. Now, beyond recruitment, not to remove from the point that you were making about, the support services as contained in the police force, while that is critical, and for every other essential service in this country, what we need to focus on is those instruments, those factors that would help the efficient policing system in this country. So beyond recruitment, what the new administration of the police force should be looking at is the core welfare issues in the police force, the state of accommodation of the Nigeria police force, the barracks of the police force. They leave much to be desired. When you enter also, the Nigeria police stations across the country, they also leave very much to be desired. It's really not a sightly view upon arrival. Also, there are other critical issues that would also contribute to the efficacy of the police force. Funding, yes, funding for investigation. Each time you present a case at the force, you are asked to provide funding for investigation. Little wonder that many people, they forget their case, particularly those who are bringing forth issues relating to sexual and gender-based violence, efficacy, and then Ayo talks now and again about the desire to help the men of the Nigeria police force that he encounters, with some form of amount or the other, just to enable them buy fuel. They do not have fuel, to go about their services. What happens when there is an emergency, down the road or down the highway? These are some of the issues that the administration of the new IG should look at beyond shoring up the force of the numbers of men of the force. We can't say it enough that the army is overwhelmed with tackling internal insurrection, which is the primary duty of the Nigeria police force.
Well, that's not to say, of course, Bukola, that it is not appreciated the inputs of other sources of funding, for the police. Private sector does a huge lot. State governments at various levels also do a lot of things in that regard. Appreciate it. However, the personnel are not enough. That's what the IGP is saying, and it is something critical.
Yeah.
Guys?
Guys, this matter of the number of policemen to the population, the ratio of policemen to the population has been on and on. And hearing the IGP say we need more personnel to be able to police the nation effectively, it's not a new song. It's almost as though it's a cracked CD. I mean, when you're playing a CD and you get to a point where it's just, at that point, just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Almost every other Inspector General of Police has talked about this. The question is, when would action be taken? Ideally, you've outlined everything, where in the police force, there are drivers, there are mechanics, there are doctors, there are lawyers, there are all manner of professionals in the police force. So the actual number of personnel that do the policing is abysmal. See this, ideally, the recommended number is 3.4 policemen to every 1,000 people in the population, or about 300 policemen to every 100,000 in the population. Do we have those numbers? Adding the 190 as the IGP has requested or has suggested, would that make the difference? And you hear a lot of people talk about the need to decentralize the police. Would that also help? What's the role of the NSCDC? We have all manner of policing groups across the country. Each state has a traffic management or a body that's supposed to manage traffic for them or manage movement on the road. They have vigilante groups. We have the NSCDC that has its own functions defined for them. At the end of the day, at what point are we going to see a unification of all of these functions and then decentralized so that we see policing down to the local government? In other climes, you find local government police. You find, you call them county police. Then you find the state police. Then you find the federal police. At what point are we going to get to that point where we say, okay, you know what? We need to get this to the people that really need it most and reduce the number of police personnel guarding individuals. You see, the big men, going around with at least 4 policemen protecting them. What happened to the citizens? I thought private security would have helped to protect these individuals so that we have more policemen on our street. But hey, who am I? But we'll take a moment and look at what the papers have to say after we have said hello to this man across here.
I was wondering what's going on here, man. What's happening here? I know it's a Friday, but come on, slow down this Friday move.
No, Chamberlain. See, it's, if I continued, the truth is, the pain of what we need to secure our society is something. It's not something that we just banter on it and it moves on. It's something that needs to be done, and quickly so. Because the truth is, I mean, at the point we're having conversations, the police are not supposed to be living in the barracks. In other climes, the police live amongst the people so that they get direct information and things are working easier for them. But
well, yeah, I mean, guys, I mean, you've all made very interesting points, and we also do remember, I think it was sometime in 2022, towards the last quarter thereabouts, where President Buhari at the time did say that the federal government had recruited 40,000 policemen in 4 years. And so many then wondered, because even the then IG had complained that, look, we were not meeting that target, we were really short. And so, but I guess what this government does with policing and security, or particularly policing, will be very, very instructive, because we know that they were very, very vocal in terms of the structure of the country, speaking largely now. But I guess it's something that we'll keep tabs on, because even after they did that police reform, several states, several regions kept on saying, look, we still need to take certain other steps. But that appears to have quietened down a bit, but I guess it's something that we'll wait and see.
IGP speaking now, I don't think it's quite...
So he's bringing up that matter again, right?
Bringing it up again. We need more personnel. We need more personnel. But hey,
all right,
how that works out.
Okay, well, yes, indeed. We might as well just, go ahead and go right to the data. Yeah, very good morning to everyone, by the way. And so we'll start with Vanguard newspaper this morning. Coup scare. Sit-tight leaders move against their military. Well. What do you know? So they say, I think they're like, well, to be forewarned is what? To be forearmed?
To be forewarned is to be
But
forewarned.
I thought they just didn't bother about what was going on. At the time, ECOWAS was trying to meeting and trying to stave off all of this in the Niger Republic. And now, look at that. So what? They're trying to sit tighter? Well, let's read some of the writers for you. Rwanda retires 12 generals, over 1,800 other ranks. Cameroon reshuffles military. Work on response to Gabon military coup. GOC asks disloyal soldiers to leave the Nigerian army. Whoa. Gabon coup chief to be sworn in as, quote, transitional president Monday. ECCAS, that's ECAS, condemns Gabon coup. Why we should wield big stick on coupists, ascribed to Tinubu, insists nobody is interested in war. Asks Sultan to go back to Niger. Focus on disease that births coup, not symptoms, article tells African leaders. Poverty responsible for coups in Africa. So, there you go. Different perspectives on this matter, but it is a thing in Africa. It turns out that, it is a big lead on the front page here this morning. And, this one is coming through from Lagos. Extortion. Truckers pay, look at that, 40 million naira daily at Lagos Ports Corridor. And you know what happens at the end of the day. After they pay this money, they transfer it to customers, the clients, the citizens. They'll bear the burden.
Yeah.
So if they pay 40 million naira daily at Lagos Ports Corridor, is that why that place has just defied every step to be sanitized?
Well, Jim, there's a whole lot that needs to be done on that corridor. You know how many times, how many governors, how many ministers of How many presidents have even visited that site? Say, okay, we need to sanitize it. Practically every governor that comes into Lagos State goes to the port. We need to sanitize this route. We need to sanitize it. And it looks as if the sanitation efforts never really work out. At what point do we say, okay, enough of this? When do we automate? Automate the system. And as I said, when you take out the human contact, when you reduce the human contact, a lot of these things, you just see it glaring.
Oh, interesting that the custom boss has been there for a while, so he understands what needs to be done and what's going on. So many will be looking to him to see how he responds. And then one more from here. FG shots MMIA October 1. Pulse Nigeria Air Project. There you go.
Nigeria Air is in the news again. Well, let's hope this time it will be for good. But let's move on to the Guardian newspaper and how, start up with this big one. Democracy without elections, that's what they're leading with. It's a big story. And how emperor governors, ad hoc administrators collapse grassroots governance in 238 local councils. This looks like what the countries are talking about, coups in the countries. Are these coups in the states? There's 238 local councils have their administrations and governance messed up. Look at the black spots in that map there. Looks like that's what they're talking about. If you go to page 4 and 5, you get the read. But fortunately, coups can't take place in the states or in the local governments, can they?
Well, if you disrupt the democratic process.
That's a coup. So these are, would you call these ones forms of coups? Go to page 4 and 5 and read that story there and what they're talking about. Above that, you have minister orders relocation of foreign airlines to new Lagos airport terminal. I guess that's that story you're talking about. It continues on page 3. And below this map, you have, after 244 years of reign, sit tight, African leaders review security architecture. Sit tight, that's the word there. Sit tight, African leaders. At what point do you say, I've done enough to serve my people, and then I step aside? You wait to be told, as some will say. I think it's Shakespeare that said, it's better to leave the stage when the applause is the loudest. CBN, banks investigate suspected $1 billion currency counterfeiting. It's on page 8. And this one, revenue falls by 23% as federal, state, local government areas share 4.37 trillion naira. But this one is an interesting one. That's painful, really painful. 2,000 at the bottom strip, 2,588 children sexually, emotionally abused in 12 months. There's Lagos government. It's on page 28. That is not good. That is not good. Parents, guardians, please. In 12 months, 2,588 children sexually and emotionally abused. Where is the future? That's abusing our future there. That's it from The Guardian.
Something for us all to think about as we turn to Leadership Friday. Leadership Friday sounds like it shared notes with Vanguard newspaper. Listen to the big story. Coups. Panic triggers mass retirement of military officers in African countries. Rwanda retires 12 generals, 1,000 officers. Cameroon reshuffles commanders. That's the country where the leader, the president, has been in office since 1980. That's 43 years, Ayo. 43.
Well, that's just a fraction of the 244 reign that, Neota read from the front page of The Guardian.
The Guardian. Well, African leaders must do better by their people. Well, they're also reshuffling commanders there. Listen to this one also. Nigerian army asks disloyal soldiers to quit. Learn from coups in Gabon, Niger, others. Falana warns FG, and was quite interesting and compelling, for you to listen to the senior advocate yesterday at that labor event. Focus on causes of coup, not symptoms. That's the PDP presidential candidate, Atiku Abubakar. Again, Tinubu advocates diplomacy in Niger crisis. What are the deeper lessons, really, to learn from these coups? What's the state of, the living of the people in most of these African countries? Poverty is on the high.
Exactly.
There's a state of disillusionment. It appears as if the elite are more comfortable living in these countries than the people themselves. Look at Nigeria. The Japa syndrome is causing people, to amass money that they do not have just to leave the country. So it's something for African leaders to think about, really.
There are those who talk about 100-year cycle in every generation, 100-year cycle where things that have happened before happen again. Things that have happened before happen again. The COVID, for instance, the poverty spread and all those things, So that is perhaps where we are now. What I'm just hoping is that, as you said, we'll learn from these things and not allow it to rule our lives, because the consequences of this extremity, we don't even know. Those who lived in the 90s will tell you what the consequences are.
Truly. And just to remind us that the retirement gale is just treating the symptoms rather than the root causes. Listen to this one. It's interesting. 2023 opposition presidential candidates beg Tinubu for appointment. Who are they? You'll have to find out from the inside pages of Leadership Friday. Somebody's doing a double take by my side here, but I'll hand over the baton to him.
Well, it sounds like a very big God. Daily Trust newspaper this morning has this one on its front page. It's completely different from what we've seen before. Palliatives. Yep. Rice price spikes as FG states suppliers mop up markets. What does that mean? Look at the riders. 50 kg bag records 10,000 naira increase in 10 days. Whoa. Our supplies depleted by high demand. That's according to traders. Inadequate paddy, poor yield, responsible. That's from the millers. And prime anchors shortchanged government, according to AFAN. Presidency, NEMA, mom. The details of that you'll find on page 4 of the paper this morning. Right under that nameplate is, of course, one of the stories there is what you also highlighted. 4 ex-presidential candidates visit Ganduje, seek appointments. Now you know where that happened. Niger coup, Tinubu asks Sultan to return to Niamey, and a number of other stories you find on the front page of Daily Trust newspaper. What's the Daily Trust today?
A New Telegraph, coup scare. They focus on that as well here this morning. Rwanda sacks 83 military officers. Cameroon reshuffles positions. And then you see the riders here as coup supporters parade new leader in Gabon. Niger, military option, last resort if diplomacy fails, Tinubu tells NSCIA. Commits 50 billion naira to rebuilding of Northeast, Northwest. Let's deal with disease, not symptoms, Atiku tells African leaders. I know regions like what? The Southwest, South, Southeast. They may be wondering, or maybe you're next. So you never know. If there's 50 billion to rebuild Northeast, Northwest. Look, everybody wants development. Everybody wants a thing or two.
Everybody will be clamoring for this.
So you never know. And then look at this at the bottom strip here. Ministerial ambition. El Rufai may bounce back as Sanusi, others mount pressure on Tinubu. So you never know. You just never know. So that is New Telegraph this morning, guys.
New Telegraph. Let's take a very quick look at the Nigerian Tribune this morning. We still have Nigerian Tribune as an option, right? There's something happening at the airport in Lagos that will, of course, cause a stir. Keyamo suspends Nigeria Air Project concession of airports. Says suspension stays until all processes allegedly non-transparent are reviewed. President briefed, directs international airlines to relocate to new terminal of MMIA from October the 1st. It's a page 12 read, just in case you're wondering what all of the implications of this directive would be. But he commits to, that's the new Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, that's the nomenclature, is committing to, sanitizing the process and serving Nigerians. Let's take a look at some other stories. At the bottom strip, there's this interesting one. Ogun Assembly summons Accountant General, Jack committee members over alleged local government fund diversion. There's some more riders. 7 councillors suspend Ijebu East local government chairman who accused Abiodun of fund diversion for financial misappropriation. Case against me baseless. That's ascribed to the chairman, I'm just curious about this story, Ayo. Is that the solution to what may be someone making an allegation? Why don't you investigate the allegation made by that person? Why should suspension be the response to somebody making an allegation?
Are they politicians?
It sounds like coups and counter coups.
Are they politicians?
I'm just asking them.
No comments.
But good question. They are politicians, if that's the answer to your question.
No comments.
But that's also causing some debate right there. There's also this one under the Ogun story. Delta Guba, Appeal Court orders Election Petition Tribunal to retry LP candidates' petition. Wherever you look in the Labour Party, there's one form of tussle, contention, or the other. And just before we exit the Nigerian Tribune this morning, all eyes on Makinde Adeleke over Adagodo's replacement. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
This Nigeria has this on its front page, and it's talking about humanitarian affairs. Over 16 million Nigerians affected by humanitarian crisis, according to Minister Edu. Is that to say that they are, worse than those 133 million multidimensionally poor? I look at the riders. Situation occasioned by security challenges, unrest and flooding. Discloses 46,000 Cameroon refugees already in Cross River, Taraba, Benue. I guess that kind of answers that question you raised about Cameroon the other time. And under the picture on the front page, coup, go back to Niger. Tinubu urges Sultan of Sokoto, says Gabon military takeover confirms his fears. The details of that you'll find on the inside pages. Building collapse. FCTA to conduct integrity test on old buildings. Stories on page 7. INEC begins recruitment of ad hoc staff for Bayelsa, Kogi, Imo, Guba polls. All of that you'll find on page 14 of this Nigeria newspaper. And look at this last one. Court dismisses suit seeking to set aside Ayu's suspension. Oh, really? Again, politics.
It appears the last hasn't been heard of that one.
Obviously.
But, I can't take my mind off the big story on the front page of this Nigeria IO. 16 million may not capture this, poverty situation or those in IDP camps in Nigeria. There are quite a number of IDP camps. In fact, some camps, according to reports from the papers yesterday, that we thought had been shut in Borno State are still operating. And then there is, the situation of many Nigerians who have sought shelter in border countries like Niger and Chad. Some of them may be mired in difficulty or may be seeking to return. So this doesn't capture the situation.
Well, I guess it's just one of those things to keep our eyes on. 16 million Nigerians affected by humanitarian crisis, and that's just to say they are affected by just humanitarian crisis. How about those who are multidimensionally poor? 133 million. As at the last count. How many have been added or exited poverty or multidimensional poverty? I guess those issues we are yet to get enough of. Well, that's this Nigeria newspaper this morning, as well as a look at some of the dailies, the front pages of some of the dailies this morning. We're back right after now to begin to take on the issues as they come. To stay with us.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, indeed, we will take a look at some developments in the country and beyond it a little bit in a moment. We've got two gentlemen joining us this morning. Professor Oke Ikechukwu is the Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. And sitting beside him is Dr. Mando Obani, who's a former chairman, section of Public Interest and Development, that's SPIDEL for the MBA, also former second vice president of the same body. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning. Yeah,
Let's start off internationally in Africa. I mean, all over most of the dailies reporting how different governments, different African governments in the country, in Africa, are responding to the coup in Gabon. Some of them sacking their military, as though ensuring that they have a tighter hold on governance so that they don't want any surprises whatsoever. So they say sit tight governors, I beg your pardon, sit tight leaders, sack military officers, and then this appears they want to sit tighter. And in fact, one of the dailies did say they were warning any disgruntled Nigerian army officer, please leave. And I wonder, will they stand up and say, okay, well, I'm disgruntled, I need to leave? Let's respond there. Well, Prof, what's your impression of how this seems to be a wave in some African countries now?
Well, it is an understandable concern by sitting governments. But the most important thing to note is that the coup is a response to some political and economic realities. And for a coup to occur, something has gone so bad that some people in uniform who ordinarily should be serving the constitution of their countries decided to take governance into it. We've seen that several times in the country, and in many cases, in our own country, and in many cases, military coups against sitting military government. 3 facts on the table. Fact number 1, no amount of warning or reshufflement can stop a coup, because actually coups are, in most cases, not carried out or sponsored from the top. Usually middle-level officers who will carry out the coup, they can appoint you as a general. I agree with you. If you think back to our own past, it wasn't Murtala who carried out his coup. It was younger officers, Joe Garba and the rest of them. They kept talking to him, and he said, look, if you're going to put me there, nobody should tell me what to do. So on the day the coup occurred, he was in London, and he flew in later. So it's always that kind of thing. If you also remember the coup that led to his death, it wasn't carried out, the executions. You remember General Bisala? The report, at least after the investigations, was that they were to have bombed the plane. But unfortunately, the man, one of the key big boys sponsoring or involved, the general, was on that flight. And that's what led to a lot of things going on. We're going around to what is going on in Africa. The presidents are not asking themselves what they can do to ensure that coup will be unattractive. They're thinking of preventing officers from removing them. And that's why there's a possibility that no matter what they do, the person you're putting there as you reshuffle, who is telling you what's in his mind? He may have been waiting for 15 years. Now you've got him to watch your back, and he takes you out without warning. Colonel Mengistu, he was one who took out Emperor Haile Selassie in Ethiopia. He was his right-hand man. At a point, Haile Selassie was a prisoner in his own palace. People didn't know. Mengistu was running the country until he actually formally took over. So the warning, whether it's coming from the Nigerian army or the reshufflement of presidents of several African countries, there is nothing that will prevent a coup, except you're governing so well that if somebody announces your removal, the people will say you can't. That's the only protection presidents can have.
Wow. Well, Mr. Obani, MBA incidentally just finished the conference, and it was themed Getting It Right. And in our terms, there are some quarters, some people think, wait a minute, but yeah, they may have talked about getting it right, but they haven't been seen to be holding the government as accountable as many would expect. So that message appears tongue-in-cheek. And so they would have wanted a lot more decisive action, firmer stance, or body language from the MBA. What would you say to such people?
I'm sure you fall into that group of persons that would have wanted a more forceful reaction of MBA to some of the misgovernance going on. Yes, I also share that same sentiment that the MBA is a very big body, and previous leadership have always held leadership of the country accountable and react when there is misgovernance. And people have come to respect and believe in MBA as a pressure group that should be able to put government, on check as to whether the present leadership has been doing all that. Well, some of the communiques, some of the press conferences most time also draw the attention of government to issue of insecurity, economic issues, unemployment, and then creating a conducive economic environment for people to operate. And then generally looking at the state of our judiciary, that we cannot get it right if we have a judiciary that is not functional, where issue of justice delivery is an issue. It takes average of 10, 15 years for you to have your matters resolved at the court, lower court, up to the Supreme Court, sometimes 20 years. And by the time the man who has gone to court gets what we call justice, he may have gotten to a point where he's so old, his business must have crumbled, which is probably the reason why he went to court in the first place and all that. So MBA most times have been addressing it, but times of type of leadership at times can also account for the method the leader or the president will adopt. There are those who are more forceful. There are those who want to make their point in a more forceful manner. There are those also who prefer probably using a conciliatory note, in addressing some of the issues they consider bad. I don't know whether you want me to comment about what is going on with the issue of coup all over the African continent. The point is that we must condemn military coup. The resurgence of military dictatorship in African continent is something that it should be worrisome. We know what, we were there before. We had the military, took over the continent and how they even retarded the development of most of these countries. But what is causing the resurgence now is what leaders in African continent should sit down and say, look, what is the issue? Why are we having resurgence of, because it came to a time where it became a taboo for you to plan any coup in African continent at a time. If you try it, people, the whole world will condemn. But why are we now having that resurgence? And why are people clapping for them from those countries that experience coup? So it then means that African leaders must sit down and say there must be something that is actually this cause. Are we the cause? Are we allowing a free, fair, credible electoral process in the continent?
Can African leaders who have been there for over 40, 50, 60 years ask themselves, are we the cause?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That's why the more...
He's saying that they should.
Yes, should.
Oh, okay.
Because they are the cause. Naturally, nobody will want military coup in any part of the world. Nobody. Because we know they now limit your freedom of expression. They now, outlaw your constitution. They now, infringe on your right. You can't speak freely under any military dictatorship. And that's why it's condemnable. Now that these people are now doing it, that even the citizens are now clapping, singing and dancing, it doesn't mean that there is something that we are not doing right.
But is it just about the military coups? I mean, there are coups that are happening every day that are not military in nature. I mean, one of the papers talked about emperor governors, ad hoc administrators, collapsed grassroots governance in 238 local government areas. That points to the fact that it's not just about the military. It's also about those who have been elected. Are they governing as they should? What do you think about, Prof?
There are two factors. What's the reaction of the people to the emperor governor? You see, we must disaggregate all of this. Right. If you announce a coup in the US today, anybody after listening will laugh. Well, allow that guy into the station. Come on, let's continue the game we are playing. And probably they walk in here, 5 of them, or 16 of them, and just 4 of us, and they say, hey, we've taken over. If we're Americans, we get out of isn't it?
Yeah.
Right of consciousness. Until the concept of the state as impregnable becomes public consciousness in the name of the rule of law, everybody who is given a position will think he has become something other than the state.
That's right.
That's why somebody who you bought a gun for, bought a uniform for, will tell you he has taken over. It's like nurses walking out of the hospital with syringes. Look, we're going to take over the country. Or street sweepers carrying their broom. The level of national political citizenship consciousness has not gotten to the point where ownership of the government resides in the people rather than the people in office. Imagine that you announce that you've taken over as the Oni of Ife, or as the Obi of Onitsha, or as the Sultan of Sokoto, the initial conclusion would be that a madman is talking.
Yeah.
If it turns out he's being serious, people will chase him away. So now you have in the states, the governor, National Assembly, state assembly members elected to represent the people, traditional rulers, council of traditional rulers, local government chairmen, elders, stakeholders. And the governor takes a unilateral action and nothing happens. It speaks to not the arbitrariness of the governor only, but the level of political consciousness. That the ownership of the state is outsourced to an individual who is elected to serve. That's where the crisis is.
What does that then say? Because, I mean, the traditional institutions, which you've spoken about, it appears as though, what, we take that closer to heart than the democratic process, because there will be two different kind of reactions if certain things were to happen in those two areas.
I agree, but the more important thing I believe one should focus on is the fact that the concept of inviolability of that tool has become part of the environment, ecosystem. Now, you don't have that in most states. And that's the important thing. I rig an election, I become president, I become governor. Those I pay to rig elections are there with me. And so there's no ownership. Those who voted were either given money or paid to carry ballot boxes. So this is a renegade engagement of, if you like, criminals. So, and I've had to make the point in the past that the Nigerian state has progressively, without our intending it, assumed the profile of a criminal enterprise. When you talk about land ownership, those who own the choicest properties, how people get into office and then in a couple of months they are billionaires, you see that happens without question. And that suggests the point I'm making.
Okay, Mr. Bani, that matter of where the lawyers come into play here, we started this conversation talking about the cause of coups, poverty and bad governance.
That's right.
Now, the lawyers who know the law and who are supposed to defend and ensure that the law is interpreted and executed as it ought to be, sometimes themselves are like those who live in glass house and they are throwing stones. I mean, the NBA conference just ended and the AGM turns out that even amongst the lawyers, they are fighting themselves. Coups are taking place amongst the lawyers themselves. And so how would they be in the fact that in a situation where their own house is not even together? They're not holding themselves accountable. They're not governing as they should, being exemplary. How would they be able to hold government accountable?
Yeah, well, the NBA is a small unit, of what the society represent. And I agree that those who live in glass houses should not throw stone. We have told you we're a very big pressure group in African continent. We should be able to look at governance generally, and if there is misgovernance anywhere, we should be able to tell the government in power, you're not doing well. We're a pressure group, no doubt. And for us to play that role very effectively, then our house must be in order. I agree with you. In terms of even our electoral process, recruitment process, we must also be seen to be very fair and credible, so that if there is any flawed election at the national level, we come up and say, no, we come and see what we're doing in NBA. So I agree with you totally. But you see, a pressure group is different from individual lawyers. And that's why we're saying, look, most of us should not even sit as an armchair critic. We should also throw our hat into the rings and begin to participate in the process. If you want things to be changed, you cannot be at the background and most times, be criticizing. Can you go and see what you can do in order to change the situation of things? One of us, Olumide Akwata, has already indicated interest now to run for governorship in Edo State, and we all wish him well. He did well as an NBA president. Well, he was there. There were things he did that we consider very, highly rated. And we believe that if given the opportunity by the electorate in Edo State, that would be, a very significant change in terms of the narrative of that particular state. While Akpabio, also a lawyer, was the governor, you and I know. If there is any governor that almost some governors are trying to imitate today in terms of building infrastructures and all that, Akpabio was a lawyer and did well. So many other lawyers also have done well while the elsewhere. So we, as a pressure group, we have issue. But individuals, we have actually shown some level of standing performances while in government.
I asked that question to come to the 8-point agenda of the president and what the lawyers, we do know lawyers of blessed memory, what's his name now, that could go out and go to court for the people.
Beautiful. That is a good.
Take the Constitution. May God bless you. Yes. No. I mean, that's the last one that many of us remember. That could take the Constitution and say, "Hello, Mr. Federal Government, or Madam Federal Government, as the case may be, or Madam State Government, you have messed up. You've breached the Constitution. This is what the Constitution says is the right of the people.
I agree.
And you're not following it to govern." See the 8-point agenda.
Yes.
Food security.
Yeah.
Ending poverty, economic growth and job creation, access to capital, improving security. The welfare of the people is the primary responsibility of government. Now, who would hold the government accountable on behalf of the people?
Beautiful. The issue of those agenda, you've outlined. If you look at it, most of them fall within the socioeconomic rights that is provided for even under the 1999 Constitution, Chapter 2 of that Constitution. But the same Chapter 2 that provided for those socioeconomic rights, that makes the human right, to be something that is worth the while, now says it's not justiciable. We've debated it. We've seen what Indian courts have done with regards to that. But Nigerian courts are still sticking to it is not justiciable. You don't have a right to come to court. I raised an issue also as the former chairman of Spate on the issue of local standard. Our judges, especially of the Federal High Court, are not helping, the issue of public interest litigation in Nigeria. You come to court, instead of looking at the message, they are looking at the messenger. They say, what is your status? That you have no local standard. Even when the Supreme Court of Nigeria have departed from the rigid position in Ibrahim Adesanya's case and say any individual, any lawyer, any taxpayer can come to court and insist on good governance, on respect of rule of law, on public interest cases. But those justices at the court of, Federal High Court, sometimes they delay a matter so that the matter does not become a live issue. They ask you, Mr. Obani, you can withdraw. You can see that this matter is no longer a live issue. Or they now rule that you have no local standard to have initiated the action. Because they start examining you, what is your local? Instead of what you have brought into court, you are seeking for relief. That there is a misgovernance here, there is lack of rule of law here, there is issue of, infringement of fundamental right. They now look at you, that you have no right whatsoever. What have you suffered over and above every other citizen? So that is an issue. We must convey a conference, a national conference on this issue of local standard. I'm a public interest lawyer. And I'm very interested in making sure that we hold government accountable. With all this agenda that the current president has listed, we should be able to go to court and say, you made this promise to the people. You are not keeping to it. You are not respecting rule of law. Bawa is still in detention. MFL is still in detention. Meanwhile, part of your rule of law is your agenda. So
I thought there's a new charge against former CBN governor.
Yes, but for the fact that there was an order of court that has not been complied with, and we have a new AG now, and I know he's a very good gentleman, he will be able to advise the government. There was a court order that said that this man should have been released. That same day, they waited for him and took him back when the court made an order that he should be. So I'm saying, if you are saying that this is your agenda, start by showing this. And I believe that this government will, with the new AG that is in power now.
Well, Prof, yes, they've lifted this agenda, 8 points. Former President Jonathan had his 7 points. Yar'Adua had, I think, 7 points as well. And they all had these points. Yes, the ministers are on board now to ensure that all of this trickle down, they make things happen. Plus, we also have the governors who have received loan and grants, 5 billion, expected to ensure that the people don't feel, at least reduce the economic crunch. But maybe you should tell us now, from what you've seen, what kind of impact do you see all of this having on the economy?
One would have expected this 8-point agenda to come up much earlier. This government has been. Imagine the effect this would have had on Nigerians if at inauguration, alongside with the president's statement about subsidy, he went on to say, I am coming in as president with an 8-point agenda, and then he enumerates them. There will be excitement in the polity, etc. So it's coming a little later than it should, but it's good that it has come. The other point to make is that it's also following the pattern that has become the norm for more than 20 years now, where governments, national governments, no longer speak of national development plans, but of regime agenda. When you speak of a comprehensive national development plan, even the tiring of roads will not depend on whether I like Obani or not, but on the fact that if in the next, say, 15 years we tire X number of roads because of their economic value, we integrate so. So you're talking about national development, but before the expiration, you review and you go on. But here, governments don't even review budget performance. So that's it. So what you have in place of national development plans are, what you call activity plans for problem solving. That is it. On that basis, you look at those 8 points. Oh, where my body is itching, okay, I'll give you something to rub on it. Whereas I need a comprehensive health check. Now, looking at the 8 points, there is nothing like poverty. What's the word now?
As ending poverty.
You can't. Yeah, there are countries where you can speak of having ended poverty in that most people can deal with their basic needs. But I think they're speaking of poverty management and progressive eradication. So moving on, moving on to look at all of them, the agenda has come out. The thing is to make sure it delivers results. Food security is tied to national security. Part of the crisis of feeding today is that farmers have been out of business for more than 6 years because of banditry. Demand is higher than supply. Most places in the northeast that used to supply certain kinds of food, re-desertification has taken place. The middle belt, the farmers are chased out by herders. So all of that crisis together. So having brought out the agenda, a few things should happen. Number one, the Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Environment, and Minister of Water Resources should work together. So that if you want food and you're building dams, Ministry of Water Resources and Environment need to work with you for you to realize that when you build a dam, the volume of water going downstream will drop by more than 50%. The farmers and fishermen there will go out of job. So there has to be a comprehensive approach to all of that. And when you speak of rule of law, let them start, like he said, by establishing precedents. What this has done, whereas it's good that it has come out, it has also given the impression that the government wasn't really preparing. This election took place in February. It was in May. And whether you like Tinubu or not, people around him are known for strategic engagement. Seriously. So one had thought that on being sworn in, with that announcement about that a lot of other things will roll out. And it takes us back to the observations of some people, maybe extreme, like Obaseki, about whether they were... Look at the subsidy, for instance. We could see there was really no program of alleviation when he came on. Then you look today, I think they say they are sharing, the money they are sharing is 23% less than this thing. Now, subsidy has been removed for 2.5 months. Yeah.
We're saving a lot
Where
more money.
is the money? That's the question. Nobody. The first time they said they got 400 billion.
I think they said some are also being saved in the excess crude account.
Let it be. It's public communication and credibility by talking to people. That's it. Imagine you're Nigerians, you now get a press release. We've saved in the last, because if you say you saved 400 billion in 4 weeks, that means in the next 4 weeks, you've saved another 400. Let's believe you. But we'll also remind you that the record of government expenditure on subsidy was more than 400 billion for 4 weeks. So, but that communication is not happening. Where is the money going? Just make it public, earn yourself credibility. This is what we've said. This is what part of it has been used for. This is where the rest of it is. It will make sense.
Ayo Buki.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Mr. Obani, I'd just like to follow up on Nyota's question about, the rule of law component in the 8-point agenda of Mr. President, the current administration. Even though you express optimism that the judiciary is a pressure group and would, make government accountable, it appears there's little hope in that regard when you consider, how most big names, the senior advocates of Nigeria, are the ones in the defense of politicians on curious cases of technicalities in the law courts. And then there is that, optimism yet again that the new Attorney General and Minister of Justice is a square peg in a square hole. But unless we've missed it, he has said little or nothing on the criticism about, the lack of compliance with due process in the case of the suspended CBN boss and the helmsman, suspended EFCC boss. Where's the hope that the judiciary, the NBA in this case, would indeed be the hope of the upholding of the rule of law of this administration?
Well, the issue of rule of law has always been our principal thing that we believe. We believe so much in ensuring that at any point in time, the rule of law should be upheld by any government that is in power. It's barely up to 2 weeks before, after this man, the new Attorney General has been appointed, and he's settling down. He was at a conference, and he made promises like, look, we should help him to succeed by advising where necessary and also giving him all the support that he needs in order to make success out of his position that he has just been appointed. I want to be optimistic that the issue of rule of law with this new man at the helm of affairs in the Ministry of Justice will be a different ballgame entirely. There is nothing wrong in being optimistic. Now, for the issue of NBA as a body, we must insist that things be done properly. We must insist that we must have an independent and autonomous judiciary that will be bold enough at every point in time to dispense justice to every man, every woman, irrespective of tribe, ethnicity, or status. We insist on it. It's a minimum requirement. If you are appointed a judge, you are expected to dispense justice. You don't look at somebody's pocket. You don't look at somebody's where he comes from. We insist on it. It has happened in some African countries. They were now becoming like a model. We must model our judiciary like what has been happening in even the Rwanda that our governors are now going for training, and then the issue of even Kenya, and then Singapore. What did Singapore do? Or what did they do? What happened when they came into power and discovered that the judiciary had an issue of backlog of cases? The president then employed lawyers who were in practice and said, look, come and let us decongest the courts. Now, if you are interested in remaining in the bench after the entire process, you can remain. But if not, you can go back to your practice. And before you know it, Singapore, started on that note. And today, Singapore is one of the countries, most countries going to go and learn how to probably deal with quicker dispensation of justice. We have so many issues really bedeviling our judiciary. As I speak to you, a case you have can last up to 20 years. 20 years And I had expected that with the former vice president of the country being a professor of law, with somebody like a former governor of Lagos State in that particular government, and many lawyers, attorney general and all that were there in the last dispensation, that would have been something that would have been done with our judiciary in terms of justice delivery, timely justice delivery. We are still having issues that it takes average of 20 years for you to resolve issues that you have before the court. And it makes people to lose confidence. It's an issue we have to address. NBA has to address it. The judiciary has to address it. The government has to address it. And luckily for us now, we have a Senate president who is a lawyer. Bamidele Okoyemi, who is the majority, who is a leader in the House, is also a lawyer. I believe that this new government will have to do enough in order to really address this issue of justice delivery. It's an issue. You go to court, you waste all the time, all the years, and you don't get justice because of issue of not funding the judiciary, having enough personnel to deal with issues, and so many other issues. And even the Supreme Court, somebody has suggested, and it's pending before the National Assembly or before now, why can't we have regional Supreme Court? Not all cases from the state should end at the Supreme Court of Nigeria. They can end at the regional Supreme Court. We can have Southwest Supreme Court, Southeast Supreme Court, and even North Supreme Court. So there are cases from the state that should end there. Not all the cases must come to Supreme Court, only constitutional cases and some cases that has been enacted in law. But as I speak to you today, even customary matters go as far as going to Supreme Court. And today, you cannot get a date until 2026 or 27 in the Supreme Court of Nigeria. And meanwhile, you want those issues to be resolved at the judiciary, and you are not getting that particular justice delivered. So I think that now that we have a new government that say rule of law, they must look at this issue holistically, issue of looking at the Supreme Court of Nigeria, looking at the various high courts, looking at the various federal high courts, and see what we can do to ensure quicker justice dispensation. It's very critical so that we don't lose confidence and begin to take laws into our hand. That's
Mr. Obani,
my take concerning
Mr. Obani,
yes.
Beyond the administrative, aspect of, the legal work, there's also the concern about lawyers being involved in politics. And you've rightly noted, that one of your past NBA presidents is making a foray into politics. And there's also that concern that past NBA presidents have been less and less critical about government, particularly in recent times. But let's leave that part of the conversation. Let me come to you, Professor Okechukwu. One of the other components of the 8-point agenda of the administration is improving security. And we have with us now former governors being Minister of Defense and Ministers of State of Defense. It's come to our notice that the budget allocated to the military has more of the allocation going to, infrastructure development rather than welfare and, remuneration of the men of the force. Do you see these men, these ministers, weighing in, to commence any significant reforms that will see, a transparent process in the budgeting of the military?
Yes, I do, but I'll take a slightly wider view. If they are ministers and their concern is to expand budget, they should be fired. Former governors are supposed to be chief security officers of their states, but the police commissioner is not under their command. So this is their chance to rethink the national security architecture from the angle of integration, inclusivity, and efficiency. And should also ensure that governors, when they hold security meetings, mandatorily involve the prison services or correctional services. Because you see, nations develop with data. It is from the prisons that you find what percentage of people are in prison because of armed robbery, because of clashes and the rest of it, and it enables you profile criminality, the level of convictions from the different places. Well, coming back to the question of the military, these are the things I believe, rightly or wrongly, that they should focus on. Number one, the Nigerian military is comprehensively overstretched because of the crisis, such that you see soldiers in the streets and at checkpoints doing what should be police work. And you ask yourself, how many soldiers, how many army personnel do we have in the country to warrant even one of them performing in the civilian arena? So that's a major crisis to be addressed at several levels, at the level of recruitment, at the level of personnel management, at the level of weapon efficiency and weapon variety. That's one. Two, you come to the matter of the crisis of terrorism, banditry, among other things. As ministers of defense, they must ask themselves, how is it that criminals could be embedded in a community and the traditional ruler does not know? Security must devolve and drill down to the fact that you know who is living with you. Remember the reported case some years back, I hope it's factually correct, of when some public facilities were vandalized, I think street lights, solar lamps and all the rest of it in Kaduna State. And the report, I recall, was that when El-Rufai assured the traditional rulers in the area that they will lose their stools, if these things were not recovered, that it all came back. I hope that report is correct. But apart from that instance, there have been several other cases, at least one of them in which I was involved in, and where I say, listen, this area is not no man's land. If the people here cannot find out who and who did what is going on, hold all of them liable, suspend the traditional ruler. The matter was resolved in 3 days. So coming back to the whole notion of national security, we spent a lot on procurement of equipment. As it reflected in the performance of the military, when we were about to procure Tucano helicopters, everybody said that once he comes, Boko Haram will become history. When we bought it, we put it on display at Eagle Square and came to cut the tape. I felt scandalized. You're about to go into a fight with me, And first of all, you put up a performance to show everybody the kind of trick you used to defeat me. And I'm watching also. That's another wretched political gesture that shouldn't exist. And I'm sure you recall the report about 2 months ago now, 3, because it wasn't done under this government, where we were told that the peace we have now on Kaduna Road, and there's no bombing, not much attack, was secured through a 3-month renewable agreement with bandits by the hierarchy of our military leadership. Don't you feel scandalized as a Nigerian? It's in the papers. You can go and verify it. 3 months renewable agreement to stop hostilities with bandits. In other words, you met them and signed the agreement with them. What are you supposed to do to bandits other than take them out? Part of that report also thanked Nigerians who meant well, those who willingly, as well-wishers and supporters of peace, helped in contributing 2.5 billion naira that went into this. What does the military exist to do? This is official communication. Oh, we've secured it by signing. What happened to Katsina State? Yeah. Masari signed agreements with bandits and the same trouble. Anyway, so that's the point about it. They should have a more holistic, comprehensive approach to national security rather than just focus on budget. The element of budget is an incidental issue in all of that, but they must take it seriously.
You know, these things that you have outlined only brings to mind for me the role or a lack thereof of local government authorities. And that conversation around local government autonomy is still, if you ask me. Having had a stint with local government authorities, I know that they have their own security meetings. They have, as you mentioned, they have traditional rulers, they have religious leaders, they have CDAs, community development associations, that meet at these meetings and ensure that things don't go awry. I also recall that in my own hometown, and perhaps a number of other communities, there is right there in the middle of the town, remember the son of whom you are. You get into a community, it is you are strange, you don't look like anyone around, people are asking questions. But today it doesn't seem to be what is in existence. Otherwise, I don't know if we'll be having the same kind of insecurity that we are having, particularly at the local communities now, especially because our security agents tell us, security consultants tell us, all insecurity is local. So in terms of local government autonomy, where would you say we are? Do you think we mean it? Or as Chamberlain cited the other time, we're just tongue-in-cheek about local government autonomy or local government authorities doing the needful?
Well, my initial take is to say that there's no such thing as local government before you talk about its autonomy, or what did you call it again? So there is no such thing, because local government means there's government existing at that level with full spread out activities being carried out and with clear indications of what is achieving every week, every month, every quarter, and every year. What you have are clerical assistants to most governors who occupy the office of local government chairman but have little or no access to their actual budget. In some reported cases, I am not in a position to confirm, but I know somebody who had been in that position claimed that they got some kind of a regular monthly, I won't use the word allowance, sum that is totally at variance with the budget for the area, and that everybody keeps quiet. Otherwise, the thing is to ship out. So here we are. Governors have security votes, and I'll tell you how a former governor deployed his security votes. When he was sworn in, first of all, he slashed it dramatically, then walked out the 177 local government, town, what do you call them now? Communities in his state, and that's where he shared out the money. He got them patrol vehicles, and he told them this thing you just said. If a stranger walks into your community and you don't know, you are not there. If crime happens here and you say you don't know how it happened, all of you are conspirators. You know yourselves. I am the governor. I can't come here to secure you. I'm not from your village. You're from your village. And so he did that, got them patrol vehicles, made these allowances available to them on a monthly basis, and that's how he secured the state, and that's how the place was managed from the angle of security. That was P2B in Anambra State. So governors, Traditional rulers. It's not enough when you say they are holding security town hall meetings. It happens in the state capital. Very important people will come. Most of them will sleep through the session. Total number of people present, probably 500. Their contact with local community is close to zero. And you say, yes, we've held a summit on security in the state. The real Nigerians are not people like you and me. They are in the villages. They don't wear suits. They are not on TV. Go to where they are. Local government chairmen do not exist to drive big cars. They exist to become the cement holding the communities under them together.
But the question that will also
in summary
arise,
and in response to your question, or to sum the response, the point is this. Local government chairmen need to be seen to be doing something as autonomous and independent and effective components of public governance.
Okay. Well, there are those who will also speak to the legality or otherwise of local government autonomy, or, as you said, local government existence in the first place. So, Dr. Bani, speak to that, because this conversation around local governments being autonomous, local government being a tier of government altogether is not even existent in the first place. There are those who are wondering, look, as Prof said, local governments are just administrative units. But I was part of the Third Republic, and I saw how actively the local governments were trying to ensure good governance in their areas. I could almost not even hear the name of the governor at the time. The local governments were very active. Particularly, I recall Mushin local government, Apapa local government, and Lagos Island local government. They even had their own businesses spread all over the city. So, do we have a constitutionally guaranteed local government system or not?
That's a very beautiful question. There is a court case that I have in Abuja against all the state governors that refuse to conduct election into local government administration. And immediately I filed that suit. Most of them rushed and held what you call an election. That was not really election. It's like appointing caretaker committee chairman that they were doing prior to that court case. What is going on today, Ayo, is something that we should make Nigerians to gather in a national stadium and begin to mourn and cry, you know, over the evil that has actually fallen over the land. The issue of joint state account that the Constitution of 1999 made a mistake in putting into the Constitution, but it was for a good reason. That money comes from the federal allocation into that state account. Then the state also bring their own counterpart and put into that particular account. And then local government administrators are allowed to administer the local government in accordance with the Constitution because they have a role that the Constitution itself has assigned. But from 1999 till date, well, 1999, there was some semblance of local government administration that was allowed because I remember that there was a local government chairman called Keso Baja in my own local government, Ikuano. I remember that the transformers were giving water, borehole. We are giving in local government villages in my local government under Ojos Okano's administration. But after some time, in second tenure of Ojos Okano, they started now to tamper with the money that was coming to local government. They will ask them, maybe they have 50 million. They ask them to sign that they have received that 50 million. After signing, they just give them 5 million. 45, so that these guys knew that this is a honey pie. Okay. And they have sat on it for many years, up to now, including all the states. There's no state that is exculpated. All of them are guilty. All of them.
Let's wind down with this, and if you make it brief, it will be appreciated. The governors have just come back from their retreats in Kigali. Shouldn't we expect at least a better manifestation or an improved manifestation of democratic ethos from the governors? Prof, let me start with you.
Let's not kid ourselves. That's all I'll say to that question. Because, see, no matter how much you feed a cat, it will not become a lion. It's a cat. The earthworm crawls. The anaconda and python crawls. But the earthworm is not a species of anaconda. It's an earthworm. So when you're not primed for leadership and you go to Kigali and receive lectures, part of the time, in fact, most of the time, you're either lounging or you're doing shopping, you have your Easter code. because you made a trip and came back. Number one, there's no proof anything is. Number two, assuming Israeli for training on leadership, the question is, should they have gone? Don't we have in the country enough institutions to deal with that, for which even foreigners come? So let's not this. They could have gone to NIPS for that. They could have come to the Nigerian Emirates Resource Center for that. There are several institutions. So without questioning the fact that there's value in the trip, if anybody is expecting dramatic performance as outcome of that trip, the person must ask himself, the individuals involved, look at the number of trainings they've had since they've been in public office and measure their performance after such trainings against their overall performance in office.
And nobody's against training. But when you waste our scarce resources in going to a country that you are better than that country, it is something, again, we should...
Are we better than?
We are better than Rwanda, for God's sake, in terms of indicators. Economic indicators, but, we are better than... There are beautiful places, there are even beautiful institutions that can train our nation. Now, leadership. If by now we don't know what we need as a nation before you become a governor, then you should go and cry.
All right, gentlemen, we thank you for coming on. Dr. Mondo Bani, former chairman, section on public interest and development at SPIDEL for the MBA, and Professor Oke Ikechukwu, executive director, Development Specs Academy. Thank you both for coming on this morning. We are back in a moment. Stay on with us. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We're joined now by His Excellency, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, Governor of Anambra State. Good morning, Prof, and thank you for joining us on the program today.
Good morning. Good morning to you. Whom am I speaking with? Is that not Shehu? Certainly, that's not the voice.
No, this is Chamberlain here. There's Nota here. There's Ayo in Lagos, Booking in Lagos as well. So we're all here and ready to roll.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Prof.
Good
I know
morning.
that your ears are full. I mean, we've been also inundated about this trip of governors to Rwanda. Some say, well, there's ESTA code of support staff of $3,000 each. There's ESTA code for governors of $10,000, and it keeps going on. So perhaps start by telling us, I mean, what informs this trip to Rwanda for the governors?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And let me also start by acknowledging and thanking the UNDP and the Secretariat of Nigerian Governors Forum for making this happen. They, after a cohort of new governors come into office, they usually organize retreats for them, just trying to bring everybody, to sing from the same hymn book and thinking that we all have one country, one economy to govern, and a collective responsibility to move Nigeria forward. We've had that retreat at the beginning, but I think they thought it was also important as we grapple with some of the issues that are also cross-border and thinking about Pan-Africanist approach to matters, that it was important that we also have this kind of retreat in another African country that has some of the nuggets of the issues that we are dealing with. A country, a small country relative to Nigeria, but in terms of geographic size and the economy, but which has been able to pull itself up from total ruins 29 years ago, genocide, everything destroyed, pull itself up to a point now it's considered about the cleanest city in the world, and almost a city with zero crime, clean, green, plant, and the world has come to notice and being cited everywhere all over the world. Proud that that is an African country, an African success story, a Black African country. And we thought that it was also as part of this whole African, the Renaissance Africa, thinking about one region, one people, that we need to have this peer learning experience. So let me be clear. Within the Governors Forum, we have peer review mechanisms. We learn from each other. Within the various states, we have our retreats. I've had mine with my EXCO, the members of my executive. I just finished one about 2 weeks ago where we have, I learned, this is the first, I don't know where else it has happened, the entire executive branch and the entire legislative branch locked into a room for 2 days, trying to forge a common front as one people moving on. But then a time comes also when, like I said, this is Africa. Some of us who are Pan-Africanists, who are still dreaming about the United States of Africa, believe that we need to learn one way or the other from each other. And let me also tell you, my dear brothers, as a Nigerian, Nigeria cannot afford to be provincial in thought and outlook and expect to lead Africa or lead the world. You need to open the doors. Even when we were little kids, in the neighborhood, in the villages, you do often hear parents admonish their children, go to that your neighbor, see that younger one, the child that is 10 years older than you, see what he's doing. Yeah, that is all part of it. I'm a professor, but I'm a lifetime student. Leaders must continuously learn. You learn from the up, you learn from below, you learn from the sides. Even the smallest, the most people you consider irrelevant and so on and so forth, you need to learn. So the first thing is to state that I thank UNDP for facilitating this. All expenses paid. Nobody gave anybody any penny. Do I say unfortunately? I wish there was something to give to us and so on. But we're eternally very grateful as part of his agenda to bring Africa together, to think Africa, solve our problems, and if we can improve the leadership, then the mission of UNDP gets accomplished much easier, and which is to deliver development to the poorest of the poor people. And the lessons we learned there, the aha moments for these governors that we had was quite very, very beneficial. It wasn't for any pecuniary benefit. And I'm pretty sure many of my colleagues who had that experience felt that everybody went away with nuggets of, aha, this is something, felt quite challenged, if you like. Maybe that is the word. Felt challenged to want to do something fundamentally differently, because in many ways, many of our states are comparable, whether in terms of size. Some of our states are even far bigger, many times bigger than Rwanda. Many of our states in terms of economic size, far bigger than Rwanda. But guess what? This country is on the world map, and it's our brother there. And so, this is, in my view, this is part of the Pan-Africanist agenda, and that we need to stand by each other, learn from each other. Of course, it's not to learn everything. Pick everything. You pick the ones that work and discount the ones that wouldn't. So,
okay,
absolutely, yes.
Yes, Prof. So, quite a number of people we've spoken to say nothing wrong in training and learning from our African brothers. Fantastic. But they just thought that, considering that the times that we are in and the impression that they have of this, they ask, is it that if we had that training in this country and the facilitators come to this country, probably with NIPS and several other agencies pulling together, will the governors not have had the same aha moment?
My brother, we have a proverb in my place, and I will say it in Igbo, and I will tell you that in English, for you, maybe you need a translator. I said, no, onye njem, aka onye isi awọ, ama ihe. Translated literally, the one who travels around ends up being wiser than the gray-haired man sitting in one place. There is never a right moment. And every moment is a right moment to learn, to be able to get around and visit the cleanest, smallest, short city in Africa a country that has been able today, in many parts of this country today, the issues about ethnic, interethnic, and interreligious tensions. We've just come through an electioneering period, and with all the religious and ethnic tensions still to heal, in some places in this country, you might say they're almost at a tipping point. And you have a country that has been able to go through all of this, went through a genocide, that you had 1 million people killed in 100 days, and visiting that genocide memorial, where some of us had occasions to shed tears, and to be able to reflect back in our own country, what could be? What if we allow ourselves to get to this point? This is what people actually went through. Or going through to see the Kigali Innovation City, and people begin to compare that to what they are doing and how they could do better. And then the networks of some other people that you can see, they say, is believing. And such moments that you can go to anywhere and get in a classroom, get people to come and give you a lecture. But that moment when you step out and you walk the streets and see how squeaky clean they are, green, and see the conscientious effort of the people trying to get things done. And that moment when we had a talk, when a 27-year-old lady who was the tour guide in the bus was asked by one of our colleagues, so which one is your tribe? And she retorted and said, in Rwanda, we don't talk about tribes. I am a Rwandan. There's no Tutsi, there's no Hutu. We are all Rwandans. This is not what you get, somebody coming to give you a lecture, 20 hours, 200. And I think for a lot of our colleagues, those moments where we visited several other things, which you are trying to do yourself, or you have done, or even done better, but seeing what others have done. I go back to that proverb. You see, when you travel, when you meet others, compare experience, good or big or small, relevant or irrelevant. The reason we keep learning, and like I said, I keep reading every day, trying to learn one thing or the other. I don't think I know up to 1% of what I think I need to know. So for me, it was quite an ennobling moment, and a moment to appreciate ourselves as Africans. A country, small country of that nature, they now have a visa on arrival for our fellow African countries, and so on and so on.
Yes, so, if I may interrupt you here, I was going to ask you a question, as in, can just one trip, indeed, travel is education. And I was going to ask you, can one trip make that difference? But I chose to take it from this side. So you've gone in there, you've seen the things you've seen, and as you said, some of you actually shared some chairs. So let me ask you, what 3 decisions from what you saw there did you make, and what difference would that make in what you're doing in Anambra State?
Very, very many. In fact, let me tell you, if I could afford it, unfortunately, we can't. If I could afford it, part of the things we had declared in Anambra is to have a clean, green, and sustainable Anambra. We've declared that as an agenda of this government, to be one of, some of the, if not the cleanest states in Nigeria, but even among in the world. And we are dealing with that head on, cleaning and clearing the places. If I had resources, to be honest with you, in addition to what we are doing, the plan that we're doing, I would have been able to send even my team on environment, managing the environment. For example, Anambra's existential threat is the environment. I said that in my manifesto, and we know that. We have the second smallest landmass after Lagos. But unlike Lagos, Lagos is reclaiming land via the Atlantic, reclaiming some land. We are losing land through gully erosion. We are the gully erosion capital of the world, and then flooding that encumbers even much of what we have. And so environment is key, but this is a small country, small landmass that has been able, hills all over, 1,000 hills all over, that has been able to manage to choreograph its environment consistent with this topography. Beautiful. And if I had a chance, for example, I'm just using this particular one that is so very important to my state, almost an existential threat, I would have loved to send a few of my key persons managing our environment, dealing with the issue about clean and green, sustainable Anambra initiative, to go there and spend a few days, interacting with officials who are making this happen. How come that you don't find even a drop of what we call pure water sachets anywhere? And everywhere looks as if it's cleaned every minute. I'd like them to, yeah.
Your Excellency, interesting that what you had already set out in your agenda as a governor is what you went to see on the other side in Rwanda, and you want to follow up on that if you had the resources. But let's step back a bit and look at how Rwanda, the Rwandan government, use the resources they have, the human resources they have, and the physical resources they have to change their environment and even mindsets. I mean, you talked about asking someone, what's your tribe? And she says, in Rwanda, we don't talk tribe. We are Rwandans. And that's one of the issues we had here, which you mentioned, coming from the elections, the issue of ethno-religious differences and the fault lines in Nigeria. But in Anambra State, Anambra is rich in natural gas, crude, some say crude oil, bauxite, ceramic, and has an almost 100% arable land. May not be much, but almost 100% arable land Anambra State has. So if you have this amount of resources in Anambra State, mindset is another thing. You can't move the whole state to, or your aides, all of them, as you say, you can't afford it, to Rwanda to go and study. But there are institutions here or practical things that can be done. Would you and your governor colleagues seek to use how would you use the resources you have now to manage yourself so that issues of cutting cost of governance are taken out of the way and governance is brought to the people so that, like that 27-year-old, they can turn and say, I am an Anambrarian or I am a Nigerian and I'm not looking to go anywhere?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a long question, short question with a long answer. You have actually encapsulated the entire problems of Nigeria in that question and want us to deal with that in seconds. But let me say 1, 2, 3 things. The first is that, well, the examples you gave in terms of natural resource endowments, that's part of dysfunctional federalism. Where you have those natural resources here. We have gas, we have bits of oil and bits of some solid minerals. But guess what? The governor of Anambra, under our constitution, has nothing to do with them. They belong to the exclusive list, and that is the federal government, and so on. These are still what we need to do. I mean, just a footnote to that to remind you that natural resources and mineral resources are in the exclusive legislative list. And we're trying to, that's part of the national conversations that we need to have to think through and get back to what you might call the concept of competitive federalism, or a federalism that works, where those resources are translated to meaningful development for the people. Now, getting back in terms of managing our human resources, of course, there in Rwanda, they also benefited from global best practices, as it were. They talked to the world. They didn't lock up their doors and said, no, we are Rwandans. Nobody, no idea. We wouldn't listen to anybody. You wouldn't even know. Nobody tells you where they picked some ideas from, or who were the ones that actually advised on some other things, and so on and so forth. It's when you get it right, and people come to learn what you've done. In Anambra here, we've got a formidable team that is every day. We're benchmarking to our peers here in Nigeria. We're benchmarking to the world and benchmarking to Africa. The important thing is to deliver dividends to our people. Cost of governance, it dawned on us. I've spoken about this before. various fora, and even us as governors, we talk to ourselves about it, about, discuss of governance to realize that this country is a very poor country. On per capita terms, we're very, very poor. If I take the entire budget of Anambra State, even the realizable revenue, not even just the entire budget, and share it to the entire population of about 8.5 million people, no single person will get more than 20,000 naira per year. And so it tells you how poor we are. And therefore, the need to manage in a very, very austere manner. I gave an illustration just of that. I mean, here I drive in Austin and we try to, see my aquete here, local made, the shoes I wear, made here in Anambra, and so on and so forth. And here we are. I gave the example of us when I came here. I met a situation where it was costing about 137 million naira to clean offices, facility management, a month, 137 million a month. But we cut it, and now it costs us 11 million naira to do the same job. And we're doing that all over the place. Everybody's asking me here, how are you getting the money to do all the things you are doing? Total budget, realizable revenue, if you put it in dollar terms, is simply $100 and something million. Too minuscule. Share it by to 8.5 million people. And you see few dollars per person. And we can't afford to waste one of it. And it's not something you learn, it's something I have known and something we came into office doing. In fact, on my inaugural speech, I did promise my people that to spend 1 naira of Anambra's money, I have 2 questions. First is to ask myself, if this was my hard-earned money, will I spend it that way? And the second is, this money that the people driving keke napep or buses or in the markets contribute, is this the best way to use this money? And I can tell you those 2 questions continue to guide us every day in terms of resource management. Here, our motto is doing more with less. So we didn't have to go to lenders. We had that as well. But as you hear those things, you nod your head and say, at least it's a revalidation to you that you are on the right path. Better value for money and doing more with less. We're doing over 350 kilometers of road simultaneously, the local governments. And people are asking me, how are you funding this? And I said, well, we've had to squeeze everything else almost to near zero to be able to deliver. And one of our templates is to ask, for every expenditure we make, we're asking, what is the impact? How many people will benefit from this? Is it a few versus many? And so on and so forth. We keep getting a template of how we decide. So we didn't go to, we had how they did theirs. And for me, and for several of my colleagues, it was revalidation of that we are on the right path. And that is where to go, as it were. But like I said, we can never express gratitude enough to UNDP and the Secretariat of Nigerian Governance Forum. I wish even other donor agencies, I do say to them, the donor community, that the best thing you can do for Nigeria is not necessarily in terms of how much money you give, but even with the framework and helping us even to maximize the value for money expending in terms of our own little resources. Let us raise it. If we have 100 naira, let at least get the benefit of at least 98 naira or thereabout. If we do that, that will be equivalent to more than tripling our current expenditures in terms of impact to the people. So we got all those nuggets as what they did. But more importantly, for us, those aha moments, that's what you get when you do peer reviews. You travel to your neighbor's house. It's not that your house is not good enough, but you might see a little flower out there, how it is so well positioned. And you pick a thought and say, maybe I'm taking this home. I'm going to change the position of my own flower vase. This is what we do every day. Yesterday I was at...
My other colleagues have got questions for you. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Your Excellency, you referenced the local government and infrastructure and all that you're, infrastructure work that you're doing at the local government levels. A question that I asked earlier naturally comes to mind again. There are those who are still questioning whether or not we have local government as a full constitutionally guaranteed tier of government in the country. At the core of democracy is the rule of law. And so help us understand whether or not indeed there is a constitutionally guaranteed local government authority that you feel or do not deserve autonomy to be able to drill down dividends of democracy to their people, the way we had it in the Third Republic.
Well, again, you've asked again a short question with a long answer. And let me be clear on this. Guaranteeing what we have, the way the Constitution has designed it, is one thing. But whether what the Constitution designed is efficient or the best is another question. Okay? And I don't speak from... what we're trying to do in Anambra here is to strengthen the local government systems to be able to deliver the dividends of democracy. In fact, relying increasingly and largely on the local government as a mechanism to drill down much of what we're doing, be it in the area of waste management, be it in the area of even our street lighting and its management, be it in the area of managing the environment and so on. We're cascading a whole lot of responsibility that used to be done from Oka here down to the local governments to take responsibility, as it were. And we will strengthen and continue to strengthen the hands of the local government. Even the designers of the Constitution also created all manner of things to ensure that the so-called autonomy is not absolute. There is no absolute autonomy anywhere. It's also like states thinking we are absolutely autonomous of the federal government. We need to coordinate. You have one economy, you have one state, and it's how you work cooperatively. But having said that, and that is what we are doing in Anambra, in terms, like I said, strengthening the institutions of local government. Local governments that were not before, you couldn't even enter them. Now refurbish them, people are getting back to work, even biometrics to get people. Workers are going to work once again, delivering services, and the local government supervising about 17,000 street lighting projects now going on simultaneously in all parts of the state. And like I said, I believe that we need to strengthen the local government. But let me answer one major thing, and that is about the status of local government. Quite frankly, you talked about the Third Republic or the Second Republic, but I go back to the First Republic, and you go back to other federations around the world. I don't know any other federation in the world where the federal structure, the Constitution, creates the local authority, creates a third tier, a third federating unit. The way it is enshrined in our Constitution is as if you have three federating units: the federal government, the state government, and the local government. No, the issue of local government should be a matter for each of the federating units to decide what type of local government does it want. To impose this unitary common local government system all over the country and so on and so forth. I don't think, this is Soludo speaking now. Forget about being governor or whatever. And I have spoken about this way many years, written on the back page of this day about it. And in the Igbo agenda on the restructuring of Nigeria, we also stated that forcefully as the Igbo agenda on our own position, Southeast, on the restructuring of Nigeria, that the local government as is in the Constitution, should be exercised. Each state, each federative unit should decide on the kind of local government structure that it wants. In my state, for example, we might decide that the local government structure that works, that delivers directly to the people, is the community government. We might decide that. Another state might decide otherwise, and so on and so forth. So you have two federative units, as in every federation all over the world, and then the federative units now decide on the local. The local structure that you find in California is probably not the same one in Maine or in Texas, as the case may be. So there are three issues you raised in one. First, should we strengthen local institutions as vehicles for delivering democracy dividends to the grassroots? Absolutely yes. Are we doing that? Absolutely yes. But there's a bit of the other one, which is the Constitution itself. And I want to say, with all due respect, that if we have to have that conversation, I've just reeled out to you the position of the Southeast with regards to the issue of the Constitution, the local government in our Constitution.
You know, Your Excellency, your position is bound to elicit another round of debate, and I wonder how sustained it will be. But let's manage our time, and I want to warn you, this is a two-in-one. First of all, there are reports that suggest that the Rwanda retreat was sponsored only to the extent that the UNDP paid for conference costs, facilitators, and the venue, that the governors actually had to bear the cost of their hotel, their aids, and their transportation. Please confirm or debunk that. Also, the administration, the president said at the NBA conference that it's not sustainable to be servicing debt with 90% of revenue. Does anything in the administration with 48 ministers suggest that there is a commitment really, to balancing it out, by servicing debt, with capital and recurrent expenditure not suffering? Is there anything that suggests the commitment of this administration to that? Let's benefit from your experience as former CBN governor on that one.
Thank you very much. I think you are really prepared this morning. I think, the first part of it is the easier one, and which is about the payments. Coincidentally, I happen to have been there, and I must admit, I happen to be one of those who suggested and felt that Kigali was a better place to do this. And I'm very glad that all our colleagues, everybody felt this was fantastic, and this was a great choice of a venue to do that. Second is that, coincidentally, I didn't spend a penny. I went with 1/8 of mine, and we didn't spend a dime. Flights, I just walked into the airport, they booked for me and my aide, and then we flew in there, stayed in the hotel, and checked out, and nobody asked me for to pay. I did not spend a dime because I didn't even have a chance to go anywhere else other than the structure, because it was very intensive. 3 days, from first thing in the morning till night. It ended each night again with walking dinner, either with the government officials or with their private sector. And then the third night with the president, where we spent about 4 hours with the president himself, and so on. So that wasn't even, I did not spend a dime, not 1 penny, except when we went to the genocide memorial. And they told us, after all the tour, they told us, maintaining the memorial was strictly on charity. And if anybody felt like he needed to support it, there's a basket there, you could go and drop something there, and so on. It's so nice. So if you felt like anything, if you have a loose change or whatever thing, you could go and drop in the basket. And I think some people felt, oh, with the tears in their eyes, went to drop something there. Other than that, all expenses paid. So that's given with that. Now, with regards to the macroeconomics of this country, the macroeconomy, that's probably a subject for a whole program. And okay. I only need to say to you, and in empathy and commiserations for the economic team of the president. This government inherited from a macroeconomic standpoint, I would say the economy was like a dead horse, but standing in macroeconomic terms. And, modeling through this over the coming months will be bumpy, no question about it. But I am glad that at least the first salvos have been, shot by the president, by his courageous step to remove the obnoxious scam that has festered over the years called petrol subsidy, and then dealing with the exchange rate. You have to realize the legacies. This what you just narrated happened to be some of the legacies that the government met in terms of high debt service to revenue ratio, ways and means advances. Literally, the government, the past administration, printed over 22 trillion naira and poured into the system, backed by nothing. And so now you've got to grapple with that, the high inflation, the impact on the exchange rate, and all the disruptions. But I'm willing to give the government the benefit of the doubt. They've just set up a team. I believe that the economic team will get cracking on this. And every Nigerian should then offer whatever support and advice that we can. This is our country. We have no other.
As a matter of fact, Prof, we will look forward to at least having a lot more of those conversations with you moving forward about the economy, because it needs all the confidence boost that it can get. So we'll see how we can work that out with you so that we can have at least a lot more time to talk about the economy and get suggestions and ideas from any and everywhere will always be important. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, Governor of Anambra State. Well, that is the show today. We do thank you all for your time. We'll see you again next week. Until that time, I am Chamberlain, so have a very good day.
Enjoy your weekend.
Yourself a blessed weekend. Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Welcome to September.